Y'all, so there's this Facebook group that keeps popping up on my timeline, even though like I've never interacted with it until today, right? So it's like this rate my plate group. You post your plate of food and people be like, oh, that looks good, or oh, it does not, right? So white Europeans and white Americans who are beefing because somebody posted a picture of their plate calling something something, right? I think maybe a British person posted a picture of their plate calling French fries, they called them chips, right? So a white American commented like, oh, if y'all call French fries chips, then what do y'all call actual chips, like a bag of chips, right? So the British people were responding. First of all, those big, thick ones, those are the worst type of French fry. In America, they call steak cut and they're nasty, right? But anyway, British people were saying, oh, those big, thick ones, those are chips. Then the skinny ones are French fries, so like shoestring French fries. And then finally, a bag of chips would be crisp, right? But you know good and well when it comes to white people, especially white British people, it can't never just be that simple. They can't never just be polite, right? So they was leaving a bunch of comments like, pip cheerio, mate. How about you ask an Englishman how to speak English, right? Now, this was the crazy part. They was leaving them comments, but they couldn't speak English. Like one lady left this comment and she said, how about you ask a English person how to speak English? I was like, girl, you don't even know A from Ann. Like, you can't speak English, but you're trying to tell somebody else how to speak English. You look goofy, right? But let me get to my point. The point that I'm getting at is there were no black people involved in this discussion, okay? So the person who posted the initial picture was white. The person who commented, oh, what do y'all call whatever, if you call whatever this, was also white. Everybody responding was white, right? Wasn't no black people in this discussion. Only black person who was around was me, who was lurking. Maybe some other black folks was lurking as well, right? But wasn't no black people in the comments or whatever, right? I want to get into this comment that a white Brit left, right? And this brings up something that I say about non-Americans all the time. Not even just white non-Americans. It be all of y'all, right? So this person said, oh, Americans are so stupid. They use finna to mean going to. That doesn't even make sense. Okay, now let's get into this. Okay, first of all, which Americans say finna? Because Americans, period, do not say finna. No, there's a specific type of Americans that say finna, okay? Black Americans say finna. That's a part of AAVE. First of all, finna doesn't mean going to. It means fixing to, you goofball. So you leaving this comment trying to talk crap, you don't even know what you're talking about. Like, this is what I say about white people all the time. You don't understand the first thing about AAVE, but you steady chatting about it. Like, it's crazy because white people never have this thought that maybe AAVE is a rich dialect that they simply don't understand. No, they always go straight to, oh, it's stupid. But you sitting here and you don't even understand how to speak it. You trying to explain it and you explaining it incorrectly, right? But you can never just say, okay, like clearly this is above my pay grade, right? You know what I'm saying? No, you got to sit there and try to pretend that you don't understand it because it's stupid, not because you stupid. That's the first thing, right? Now, my second thing is this, right? I talk about this all the time. I talk about how non-Americans, they will say something racist towards black Americans, but they'll pretend that it's just a comment about Americans, you know, and that it's okay because they said Americans instead of specifying black Americans, even though it's very clear who it's targeted to. You are a white person, and honestly, it don't always be white people who do this. It'll be Middle Easterners, Asians, whoever, right? It'd be non-Americans, period, right? So I would say you are a non-black person who is sitting here calling a black dialect of English stupid, right? You targeting black people specifically and calling us stupid. And you pretend that that is not racist because you said Americans instead of saying black Americans or black people or whatever, right? And then when you point something like this out and be like, okay, this is some very, you know, poorly veiled, thinly veiled racism, right? Then suddenly it's cheerio, mate. Why do Americans have to make everything about race? You literally sitting here being racist and then you mad when somebody calls that out. Like, the gaslighting be so, like, elementary. It don't even be like, you know, like anybody finna take you seriously. Oh, you saw that finna right there? Hold up now. Come on now, right? But it's just like, come on now. Who is dumb enough to actually, like, not see through this? And the funny thing about this is y'all talk all this crap about Americans making everything about race. And it don't even just be non-black, non-Americans who do this, right? It be non-American black people too. So Africans and Caribbeans will say this nonsense too. Oh, yeah, black Americans are so focused on race. Whole time, the only reason they not focused on race is because they from majority black countries where, you know, there is no racism for the most part because it ain't no non-black people, right? And it's funny because as soon as those Africans and Caribbeans move to the US or the UK or wherever and they experience racism, they shut up, right? And my point about that is these people who are from non-American countries, whether it's in Europe, Asia, wherever, they are super racist. They are super racist, but they really use America as a scapegoat. And y'all know one thing about me, baby, I'm a hold white Americans accountable every single time, right? But I think it's very peculiar how, like, the rest of the world pretends that white Americans is the only racist people on this planet. Like, that don't make sense to me when the rest of the world act how the rest of the world do. Like, somebody make that make sense for me, please. It's wild to me how, again, black Americans were not involved in this conversation at all. Like, nobody was talking to us. Nobody was talking about us. We was not in the mix. We was not talking to nobody about none of this because, quite frankly, we don't care about what white Brits call French fries versus whatever. Like, we don't care about that. You know what I'm saying? That's something white Americans care about because them is they cousins. You know what I'm saying? Okay, makes sense, right? But black Americans could not possibly care less about white Brits saying chips to mean big, thick French fries. We don't give a fuck about that. Like, honestly, nobody cares about that in the black American community. That has never been discussed. You never gonna see us asking about that because we really don't care what y'all do or what y'all talk about, right? But still, we got brought up. We like, y'all in the comments dogging out our diet. Like, Americans say finna to mean so and so and so. It's wild because it's like, white people are just so, like, uneducated. You know what I'm saying? That's the best word I can think of to describe this. Because white people, first of all, it's funny to see them go back and forth with each other because, you notice they use the same arguments with each other that they use with other groups of people, right? So it's funny because white Americans say the same thing about black Americans' diet, like, oh, you uneducated, so and so and so. But then you see white Brits say the same stuff to white Americans. Oh, you uneducated, ask us how to speak proper English, so and so and so. Like, that's the exact same stuff that white Americans say to black Americans. Oh, you don't speak proper English. It's funny to see them use the same arguments and insults on each other, right? But then my next thing is this. They're so uneducated because you can tell that they know absolutely nothing about AAVE. Like, if they sat down, read a book about it, read an article, anything, they would not be leaving these comments. Years ago, I wrote this paper about AAVE, and I put the link to it up here because I made a video reading it, right? And I was reading this book, and they were talking about how black American kids are bidialectal, right? The same way some other groups of kids are bilingual. And they were talking about how, like, for example, if you have ESL kids, English as second language kids, say it's some Hispanic kids who only speak Spanish or something, it's not the best to just give them immersion learning. Like, if you just put them in an English classroom and, just let it be, they're not gonna grasp it very well, right? It's better if you put them in the English classroom sometime, but then also you need to take them to the side and speak Spanish to them and explain whatever to them, right? And they said the same thing is true with AAVE. It's not the best if you put these kids in a classroom with standard English, right? It's better if you also teach them in AAVE. They said that black American kids who have black American teachers who speak AAVE, their kids always perform better on exams than black American kids who have white teachers because of this immersion technique. It's funny to me because I'm fluent in AAVE and standard English. And that's, I think, because even though I didn't grow up around white people, so I grew up speaking AAVE, I read a lot of books. And I will tell you right now, every book is written in standard English. It's written in white people English, right? So if you read a lot of books, you're going to end up being fluent in white people English, right? To this day, I will say, because, I'm kind of getting off track, but a couple years ago when I had this class that I wrote this paper on AAVE for, when we got to the unit on AAVE, they put a sentence on the screen, because this is an online class. This is even before COVID. I had an online class. But they put a sentence on the screen, right? And the sentence was in AAVE. And I read the sentence in my head, and I was like, that don't make no goddamn sense, right? I was like, that doesn't make any sense. They trying to make us sound stupid, right? So I picked up my phone, because again, this is an online class, right? I get on Snapchat, I start recording the screen. I'm like, look at this shit, y'all. Like, they trying to say this is how AAVE sound. Like, this is not how we fucking talk, right? So then I read the sentence aloud. I'm like, look at this. Don't nothing be wrong with the way I be talking. And I was like, wait a second. When I said it aloud, I was like, wait, that does make sense, right? But when I read it in my head, it didn't make any sense. And I realized in my head, I read like a white person. So I'm like, yeah, when white people read a sentence like this, it doesn't make any sense because in their heads, and even out loud with white people, they're using the rules of standard English and applying it to AAVE. So it doesn't make any sense, right? But then when I spoke it aloud, because I speak AAVE, suddenly I realized, oh, it does make sense. But again, white people don't speak AAVE, so they never have that light bulb moment. That's like me reading a sentence in French and applying the rules of English to it. It's not going to make any sense, right? Like, for example, in English, we say the adjective and then the noun. So we'll say, oh, that's a black dress, right? But in French, they say the noun, then the adjective. They'll say that's a dress black, right? Now, if I read a French sentence and I applied the rules of English to it, I'll say, well, that doesn't make any sense. The adjective is supposed to go before the noun, right? But I can't do that because French is a different language with different rules to it, right? So I don't get why white people do this with AAVE. They will sit there and apply the rules of their dialects, of their languages, to our dialect, to our language, and say, oh, well, that doesn't make any sense. Well, I wonder why, because your ass is not using the correct rules for it. Like, again, y'all are so slow, and y'all really be thinking y'all be doing something.